On Thursday, I had my annual physical with my doctor, and after 20 minutes of talking to him without saying anything that's going on inside my body, I felt I'm really lucky to have this doctor. Before he even asked me what was happening physically, he wanted to know about my life, how I was doing emotionally, how I was doing spiritually, and it really was 20 minutes into the conversation where we started talking about, which I am not going to get into, the ways in which my physical body could be doing better things. No, thank God I'm basically very healthy. But it struck me reading this parsha that our view of medicine, changes a lot, and we all probably have a different view of medicine. And no disrespect to any doctors in the room right now, but that's not a typical experience with contemporary medicine. Usually we just address the symptom and we're not looking at the cause, and we're not looking at what's going on a more holistic level. There are obviously lots of exceptions to that, and I think it's changed a lot culturally. But I want to just... Yes, Eden? I have an exception. She's called my mom. No, I think many doctors these days are operating in a much more holistic way and really looking at the whole person. But when we look at what the Torah seems to be saying in these two quite difficult parshiyot, Tazria and Metzorah, about medicine, the Kohen is the ritual functionary of the community, and it is the Kohen who diagnoses, it is the Kohen who prescribes the cure, it is the Kohen who sees the full person for who they are. As I said earlier, it says again and again and again, Ra'ah HaKohen, the Kohen, the priest, saw. They didn't just see like a pussy emission that was on the skin. They saw the whole person. And so for the rabbis, the relationship between the cause and the symptom and the cure is really, really important and significant. And there's all kinds of midrash about that. Now, I'm very sensitive as I say this. I'm very aware of the stigma that is attached to especially people suffering from long-term chronic illness, that if we kind of try to ascribe meaning, and if we try to say all this is happening to you because, blah, 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 it's a very painful thing. So I'm not suggesting that. I am going to talk about some of what the rabbis and some of what we could be thinking about in terms of our relationship to our own bodies and our relationship to how we show up in the world and what we do and what we say and what we think even. But I don't want to dismiss the experience of people with long-term chronic illness at all, or people who have all kinds of different mental illnesses. It's not like a binary here where it's just like, this is happening because blah, 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 blah. It's like it's much, much more complex and nuanced than that. That said, if we look at the specifics at what happens, and I said this before the Parsha, but a lot of you weren't there, so I'm just going to repeat it, that the chronology of the Torah seems to first be talking about what actually happens to your own skin, your flesh, and these different kinds of things that happen. And this is all in the rubric of something called sara'at, which is often translated as, and I'm going to come back to these beautiful signs that the 5th grade made, but often translated as leprosy. But it's probably not leprosy simply because it's something, according to the Torah, that can happen on a body, on clothes, on upholstery, and on walls of houses. And I don't think leprosy is something that happens in all of those different ways. So it's like this, tzara'at is a condition. The person who is suffering from tzara'at is called the metzorah. The one who has tzara'at is called the metzorah. And so there's this idea that it goes from, in the Torah's chronology, it goes from stuff on your body, on your skin, to stuff on your clothes, to things that happen to the chair that you're sitting on, to ultimately it happening on the walls of your houses. But according to Rambam, to Maimonides, in Mishnah Torah, where he talks about the laws of Tameh and Tahor, he says that this tzara'at is a sign and a wonder and a manifestation among the Israelites to warn them against certain ways of behavior, specifically richilut and lashon hara, gossip and speaking evil, which I'm going to come back to in a moment. For if a person, this is Rambam's language, if a person uttered slander about someone, the walls of their house would start to change. They'd start to get something that appeared maybe like mold on their house. And then if they repented, and the house would become clean. But if that person continued on that same kind of trajectory of wickedness, then the house would be torn down completely. And then the leather objects in the house which they sat on would also start changing. And then if that person repented, they again would become clean. But if they continued, then those things would be burned. And then the garments that person was wearing would start to change. And if they repented, they would become clean. But if they continued along that same path, then those garments would be burned. And then the skin would start to suffer a change. And they would become infected on their body with sarat. And at that point, they'd be actually set apart, kind of put into some kind of quarantine away from the community to reset. So, I mean, there are a few things that are interesting about that. I don't want to dwell on too much of it, except to say that obviously the order is changing from what's in the Torah. The Torah seems to go in the order of body, clothes, upholstery, walls of the house. And for him, it starts the other way around. What the practical difference is, I'm not sure. But what's really significant is the idea that comes again and again and again. And I said to myself this week, I'm not going to talk about this Shabbat. But I actually realize I have to, because we can't talk about enough the danger of how we speak and who we speak to and what we say to each other. And I think I am very sensitive to it at the moment. I'm feeling like we are in a very dangerous place in our world and frankly in this community, where there is just a tendency to gossip about each other in all kinds of ways. We don't all show up in the same way. And we all have our judgments. And sometimes those judgments come from an insecurity that we have inside ourselves. Sometimes those judgments come from seeing what someone else is doing that is actually reflecting something that I'm doing, but I'm not aware of it. And our judgments can come from so many different places, and it's fine to have those judgments. We all have them. It's all part of being human. It's about our frailty, our vulnerability, our insecurity, that we have them. But as soon as we start taking that judgment that we have another person and putting it out to another person and speaking and starting a little cycle of gossip and slander, it becomes really problematic. The reason, or one of the reasons that the rabbis specifically relate lashon hara, the evil speech, evil tongue, to what goes on, is based on a verbal midrash, because Mutzorah, the one this second of the two parshiot is named after, Mitzorah, the one who is afflicted with sarat, the rabbis say in a midrash, sounds like Motzi Shemra, which is the one who brings a bad name into the world. Because as soon as we start to destroy someone's reputation or say something bad about another person, it's as if we are Motzi Shomra, we're bringing this bad name upon that person. And that can spread, as we know, like a plague. It can be like a plague. We start to hear rumors about another person, we maybe tell another person, and that's how gossip works, and that's what happens in a lot of communities. And we're not immune from it. Believe me, we're not immune from it. This week I've realized how not immune from it we are, in all kinds of different ways. Don't want to get too heavy, but it's just a real thing. Every community has some version of that. Part of being in community is that it's so easy to be in a relationship with someone and talk about another person who's also in that community. And it may start as being something very beautiful and innocent, and then it's like, they, did you hear that? All of that happens. It's a very natural and human thing. But the rabbis are constantly telling us that we have to rise above that. If we look at this sort of example, and I've been really thinking about this a lot. So the whole bit that we really read, that Ed read and that Eyal read, was about the house. And this idea of having this sarat, this plague, this mold, this whatever it is, appearing on the walls of a house. And the Midrash, it's actually quite a disturbing Midrash. But the Midrash says that for the 40 years that the Israelites were in the desert, and there were these rumors that they were on their way into Eretz Yisrael, the Amorites who lived in Eretz Yisrael, for 40 years were hiding treasure behind the walls of their house. It's like, all right. And so when the Israelites lived in these homes, the mold would start appearing on the walls so that they would have to like break the walls down and then they'd find the treasure. As if it was sort of like a reverse idea that somehow this was something that had to happen in order for this treasure to be found. I find it so disturbing, but Rashi, it's important because Rashi, the first Rashi commentary on the section about the plague on the walls of the houses is that. He quotes that Midrash. I could go into all kinds of ideas why I'm very disturbed by that Midrash, about this whole idea of taking other people's homes, taking other people's possessions, what that can mean, what the effect of that. I don't want to go down that road because I reject the Midrash, even though I think it's based on something probably quite real in terms of what people's relationship was when they entered this new place and they went into new homes. And painful though it is, I think we do have to acknowledge that many of the homes in cities like Jerusalem and other parts of Israel were once owned by Arabs who no longer live in those homes. I mean, that is a reality. And it's like I think in this week where we celebrated Yom Ha'atzmaut, we have to, I think, recognize the idea of a dual narrative, that for some people Yom Ha'atzmaut is Nakba, it's a catastrophe day where they recognize that their lands were taken and their homes were taken. Now, I'm going to come back to that comment because I know some of you are bristling by the fact that I even mentioned that right now, but I'm going to come back to it for a very specific reason. But I want to come back to us as a community. Like this idea that something shadowy, anyone who's had mold in their homes, I mean, it's horrific what happens when a home gets mold on it. It can be devastating. I know people who've had to pretty much knock their house down because they just have this perpetual mold that can't go away. So if I reject that midrash and but come back to this idea that what is manifesting externally can actually be a reflection of something that's happening internally, right? Then what would that look like? So we are, God willing, going to be building a new building. Amazing, right? We have this opportunity to move into a new home. God forbid, chas v'shalom, that we would ever have something like that happen in a brand new, beautiful building. That there would be something weird that would start happening on our walls, right? And so a lot of the commentators say, well, if we want to live in homes and if we want to live in communities where our clothing and our possessions and our walls of our homes are clean, then we have to create communities where we are constantly giving each other positive reinforcement and saying positive things about each other rather than gossiping about each other. We are not a monolithic community. In this room right now, there are people who have very different opinions about all kinds of different things, right? And so what often happens, if I am aware of someone who has a very different view of the world than I do, but I know that my friend Bruce, here, and this isn't a real thing, I'm just picking you out of the crowd, but like, if my friend Bruce and I actually see the world very similarly, then I can say to Bruce, how do you think it's about this issue? Yeah, she's like crazy. And then immediately, Bruce and I have become aligned in a sort of what Brene Brown calls common enemy intimacy, where we are becoming more intimate in our relationship because of what we're saying about a third person. And it's not okay. It's not good. Like, what's good is to have curiosity, to have interest in why another person thinks so differently about the world than I do, and to actually engage, right? To make someone the enemy just because they don't see the world in the same way as we do is really hard. And I've seen that happening a lot this week. The week of Yom the cycle from Yom HaShoah to Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut, it's a complicated time. It's definitely a time where we as a community have been celebrating the miracle of Eretz Yisrael, and we will do that every year, and we will continue to do that. We had an amazing program, thank you Leslie, last night that was partially sponsored by JNF, and we had this incredible opportunity to hear wonderful stories about Israel and to celebrate Israel. And there are some people who are uncomfortable with that. And it's like, do I want to make them the enemy? Do I want to not engage them? Do I want to tell others how awful those people are because of their opinions? No, I don't. And then some of those other people, don't show up because they feel that not enough is being said about that. And so then the people over here are starting like, they're not coming because they're like really pro-Palestinian. They really don't like what Israel's doing. It's like, there are some things that Israel are doing that's not okay. Can we hold that complexity? Can we hold that nuance while still loving Israel and while still being proud of Israel and still seeing Israel as a miraculous place that we have a state of Israel? Today is the 20th day of the Omer, which makes 2 weeks and 6 days, which is Yesod of Tiferet. Yes. What?
Just yes.
Yeah. So the 3rd week of the Omer is Tiferet. Tiferet is the balancing pole. We have Chesed, we have Gevurah, we have the world of unbounded love, and we have the world of restraint and restriction. And then we have Tiferet, which is this balancing pole between the two. Our friend, many of us, he is our friend, Rabbi Gabriel Goldfetter, who used to live here in Boulder, who wrote a wonderful book about counting the Omer, describes the week of Tiferet as being about nuance and complexity and the ability to hold within one family system to hold different narratives and different realities. We have to be able to do that. We have to be able to do that. Otherwise, who are we? And I think that I have become aware of people very entrenched in their positions who are dismissing others who don't hold the same opinions as them as not having value in this world. And it frightens me. This period of time is also a time where we're studying Pirkei Avot. And there is a weekly class every Wednesday at 7 p.m. online where we're studying these amazing wisdom of Pirkei Avot. It's a book of, it's a section of the Mishnah that we study traditionally every Shabbat afternoon between Pesach and Shavuot. And there's this amazing teaching, I find it very amazing, that Ben Azai taught, where he says, Al tehi vaz lechol adam, va'al tehi maflig lechol davar, she'ein lecha adam, she'ein lo sha'a, ve'ein lecha davar, she'ein lo makom. So Ben Azai used to say that do not disdain any person, do not dismiss any person, and don't underestimate the importance of anything. Because he says, Ein Adam she'ein lo sha'ah. There's not a single person who does not have their moment, and there's not a single thing that does not have its place. As soon as we find something we don't agree with, or someone we don't agree with, it's so easy, and I do it all the time. And I take full responsibility right now, publicly, for the ways in which my own judgments and my own insecurities come out in saying things about other people, and the disappointment that I have about the people who show up and the people who don't show up, and the ways in which people give and the way in which people don't give, and all of it. Not to speak Lashon Hara, I couldn't say it publicly, but Eyal and I spent some time together yesterday, and we had a lot of a conversation about this, about how easy it is to judge others who aren't doing what we're doing in the world, right? But it's like, we don't know. We don't know who they are, where they come from. We don't know their place. And so I think that the combination of this very complicated parsha and this complicated time of year and this week of Tiferet is all about trying to create the kind of community so that when we move, God willing, into a new building, we're going to have shiny, beautiful walls that are never going to have anything, God forbid, go wrong with them, because we will be a community where we will radiate love and understanding and empathy and compassion for each other, even if people strongly disagree with who we are. And I think that's really important, because it's very, very dangerous. I don't take it literally that, like, we speak a bit of gossip, and we're suddenly going to break out in some horrible scaly rash. I don't take it literally, but I think it's an important warning of an ancient world that had a different understanding of how the body works than we might have today. And so I want to refer to these two posters that were made by the 5th grade. This one says, "How to cure leprosy," acknowledging that leprosy is a common translation for tzara, even though it's probably not. This is presented by Alex, Carmi, Abigail, and Noam, your favorite 5th graders. So this is how they teach us how to avoid leprosy. Step 1, discover you have leprosy. That's good. Step 2, go to the priest calmly. Obviously they mean one of the rabbis. Step 3, shave your head, all of your hair. Step 4, have the priest wash your clothes. Step 5, have to get bathed and washed. Step 6, wait, are they still listening? Step 7, repeat steps 3 to 5. Step 8, you have been cured.
It's a miracle.
But here it says, leprosy is a disease you get when you talk bad about someone, and leprosy gives you boils and other bad stuff. So if you don't want boils, you know what to do. Say nice things to someone, even if it's someone that you find difficult or don't agree with. And this one says leprosy. I don't know what that says. Pigeon? Oh, no. If you talk about someone badly behind their back, you get leprosy. So there you have it, 5th grade wisdom. The final thing I want to talk about is the cure. So if we have this idea of a symptom and a cause, the cure is really fascinating. Because the standard cure for someone who is being reset and taken back into the community is to take 2 live birds, to slaughter one of them, to spill its blood into a bucket, and then to take some cedar and some azov and it's a tall branch and it's a lowly branch. It's cedar and hyssop. Thank you. Take cedar and hyssop and kind of mix them into the blood, and then you take the live bird and you dip the live bird into the blood of the dead bird and let it fly free. And there's something like shocking, and obviously it's not a ritual that we're going to reenact in any way, but I think there's something really powerful about it. And for the rabbis, it's because the birds, chatter, chatter, chatter all the time, and so that's why it's a sort of homeopathic remedy for speaking, gossiping, right? But my rabbi, Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg, no, the other Jonathan, talks about the bird that flies free. In this so it says the second bird is dipped not only in blood, but also in this elixir. The life urge is restored. The bird spirit, I love this, listen to it. The bird spirit is not just allowed to fly off, but is sent off and away across the fields of freedom. One imagines it rising with the currents of air, rejoicing in the newly restored joy of unrestricted flight, for the spirit is eternally in love with the boundless wonder of life. But on its wings are the red-brown marks of drying blood. That bird that flies free only can fly free once it has the blood of the bird that's been killed. And there's something about our relationship when we do teshuvah, when we look, and I hope we will all look at the ways that we fall into this trap, because we all do, every single one of us. I do multiple times a week. If we really look honestly at the words that we have used in any given day or any given week, and which of those words have been unkind or unfair or unjust or cruel about another person, that's like we're killing a bird. But then if we are able to reset, and if we're able to acknowledge and fess up to what we've done, and then we can take this live bird and let it fly free, it will always have the blood on it from the dead bird. But there's somehow a way in which it represents the limitless capacity of our souls to do good and to speak good and to create a kind of community where we're going to inhabit an amazing building where it'll be a reflection of the amazing community where we shine each other's goodness. Shabbat Shalom.